We've heard the term, but do we know what it really means? What is blended learning? We're going to talk about that next on the EdTech vlog. Hi, I'm Dr. Matt Harris, and this is the EdTech vlog. Today we're going to talk about a concept that we think we know, we think we understand, but really we don't. And that is blended learning. What is blended learning? What does it really mean? And why is it important? Why is it something that everybody's talking about worldwide? Now let me give you just a really basic definition of blended learning, and then we'll talk about why it has to be so nuanced. So blended learning at its absolute core is a combination of online learning and face-to-face learning in a classroom between people. Now again, the people that are doing the learning, the type of online learning, that can mean a lot of things. How much of each are we using? Where is the place, the location of learning? As you can see, this notion of blended learning is pretty complicated. It's kind of like the word leadership, or good teaching, quality teaching. We have a few things we think we know about good teaching. We know a leader when we see it, but if you ask for a good, solid definition, we don't have it. That's the same thing with blended learning. Blended learning is a topic that I run into all over the world. North America, Europe, the Middle East, Africa, Australia, anywhere. South America, Asia. Everybody is concerned about how to leverage blended learning because it is incredibly powerful. If we're able to combine the notion of online learning, where users are separated in terms of geography and time from the instructor or even their peers within a learning environment, along with combining those people in the same geography, in the same time, then you have an amazing opportunity. The same way that flipped learning is an amazing opportunity where we can maximize the time that we have in the classroom or in the learning space by utilizing those connections and then putting some of the other learning activities separate from that very precious face-to-face time. The only thing that we really know about blended learning is that it is a combination of face-to-face learning and online learning. Now, let's talk about the elephant in the room. Is there a percentage? Are there specifics? How do you build out a program where we utilize both to the best degree? And the reason I talk about this is because I've done some presentations recently, not for schools specifically, but more for training organizations that are looking to leverage blended learning to increase the impact of their training programs and to increase the number of people that they're able to provide this training for. And what I'll do is I'll give a nice hour-long presentation talking about many of the things that I'm speaking about here. What is blended learning? What is it not? And I'll say at the start, don't ask me about percentages. Don't talk about numbers. And they'll say, yeah, we get it. I totally understand. There's so much nuance that we need to consider before we talk about numbers. And then you get to the end of the meeting and go, Matt, I agree with you. This is amazing. We know this is going to be powerful. But just tell us, what are the numbers? So everybody's concerned about numbers. And they're concerned about percentages. They're concerned about makeups and tools. Those are all very important. You need to think about those, but they are not the essence of blended learning. We'll get to those in just a second. What is the essence of blended learning? The essence of blended learning is maximizing opportunities with the different types of interaction with instruction. Let me say that again. Blended learning is maximizing the opportunities for learning with the different types of instruction, okay? So when you're face-to-face, be it in a classroom, in some other instructional setting, and again, this can be anybody. This can be adults working together. This can be adults with or without an instructor. This could be students in a classroom. It could even be video conferencing where people are coming together at the same time. That's a blended model. That's a face-to-face part of the blended model. Maximizing those direct instructional times for some of the important things, answering questions, having dialogue, connecting directly with the content or the instructional pieces in a way that must be done when there is human interaction. There's certain things you can't do when somebody is off on their own on a computer or on a phone or whatever the device is that works only when you're face-to-face. So understanding that opportunity for connection is critical. And then there's the online piece. And the online piece typically is a separation of geography and time. Now that doesn't mean that these people are separated from interaction, but it means that they're not sitting in the same room or connected to the same video conference, or that the instructor is in the same place and time as these people, as the learners are. It means they're kind of going on their own pace, so they can do this at whatever pace they want. There's an ability to personalize these interactions or this instruction for them without having to have them be connected to a specific time frame. They can kind of go forward and do things on their own. And it provides the ability to have what we call asynchronous interactions, right? So the asynchronous interactions could be like chats, they could be forum posts, they could be kind of discussion boards, those sorts of things where people are talking about these concepts and interacting with the content with one another, but doing it on their own time, in their own space. And there are some rules and regulations, for best practices around those things to make sure people are actually interacting, but it gives another way to have the interactions without people being face-to-face. Now the power of online is obviously it can be done anywhere. It can be done in a bedroom, it can be done in a coffee house, it can be done at somebody's own pacing, and it allows for this notion of personalization. A personalized experience or individualized experience where they can go into the content through multiple means, through interactivity that doesn't require that they're sitting in a room and being there for 45 minutes. Well, that's incredibly powerful. But the problem is that with the online side, engagement is the name of the game, right? So people have to be totally into the experience in order to make the online experience work. If they're just kind of half-heartedly doing it, just kind of clicking through, or even not getting onto the system, you have a problem. So blended learning takes this model where we've pushed the engagement for these individual learners and brought them together to codify that learning to create an incredibly valuable experience. And where do you see this most? You see this in high schools or upper secondary, where we're looking to expand the opportunities for learning without taking up more of the school day. You see this in a flipped learning environment that I talked about before, where content is interacted with at home, and then when the students come into class or into the learning environment, you're having those interactions that normally would be done at home. So instead of doing the homework at home, you're doing homework with the supervision of the instructor, so there can be a greater affective, emotional connection to the content. So it's this combination of the two, right? We're also seeing it in training, where there are questions, interactions, or even practical elements being done in a lab setting, and then all the video learning and the discussions and all the kind of the more simplistic elements of the interaction are done at home in the online environment. Now, what are the keys when identifying or creating this blended learning piece? Well, there are three main things you need to think about. One of them is time. What percentages of time are you going to allocate to the online elements and to the face-to-face elements? There is no absolute here. Blended learning is not a 50-50 thing. There is no model here. It may be 5% online and 95% in a classroom. It may be 20-80, it might be 60-40. Who knows? Maybe there's a third element you haven't even thought about around group work that doesn't require the face-to-face elements. Maybe there's a video element. The blending can be anywhere. But you need to think about that, because that will dictate to you how you're going to structure your content and how you're going to structure your face-to-face time. So the percentages are critical. The next piece is the platform. The platform you use, the learning management system that kind of holds all this in place, and how you're going to set it up is incredibly important, because each learning management platform, each learning management system, if you want to call it that, has pros and cons that you'll need to account for when creating your system. Some of them have better interactions, other ones have ties to resources, some are tied to like Google and Microsoft that might work a little bit better. Other ones have video conferencing built in, or peer-to-peer connections built in there. Some of them have assessment models built in. Other ones have the ability to give more pointed and direct and actionable feedback, which is incredibly valuable in the online environment. You have to do a real analysis of what you're going to use and how it will affect that particular course, those particular students, and the greater organization. Can you tie multiple courses together for kind of an overall model of learning? Along with that, you're going to need to know what sort of resourcing is going to be required from the student side when they're not in the face-to-face environment. Are they going to need a computer with a camera? Are they going to need some sort of audio equipment? You got to figure that out before you jump in. And then finally, the piece that I find a lot of institutions run into problems with is this notion of engagement. So the assumption is we get all the technical pieces in place, we've written our curriculum, we've really established our content and how we're going to move, and then we go. There is an emotional element here that's critical, and that is understanding how the students are going to engage with content and with others when there isn't another human being in the room. There are so many pieces here that are incredibly difficult to interact with if you've never done it. There's a maturity level of your learner that needs to be accounted for when you're thinking about these sorts of programs. So figure out how you're going to assess your students' engagement or potential immaturity and how you're going to encourage that engagement within the program. That's very, very important to be successful. So again, timing, platform, engagement. And then really talk about within your institution, what is blended learning going to do for us and why are we going to do it? It's incredibly powerful and it's a when. What do I mean by that? It's a when. It's not an if. Whether you're in higher ed, whether you're in training, whether you're in K-12, whether you're even in preschool, there are going to be elements where we're going to include blended learning for little guys. It's a when. It is the future of learning. We all have to engage in it. So it's better to be prepared now so that your institution and your teachers and your students can grow as it becomes more of a part of the reality. I know, very complicated subject, and there's much more. We'll talk about these elements. We're going to talk about this engagement piece in some further videos because it's absolutely critical for us to understand that engagement element when it relates to technology and learning. But hey, do me a favor. Down at the bottom here, you're going to see that there's a couple buttons to subscribe to my channel and to follow me on Twitter. So I talk a lot about online learning, progressive pedagogies, this notion of blended learning and building out programs across large school systems that tie into some of these critical elements that I've just talked about. So I'll do further videos on these things as the months and years go by. If there's anything you want to know about or talk about, you can leave a comment here on the page, or you can connect with me on Twitter. So the things that influence me as I do my work is I go out to schools and see what they're doing, but then I also look at articles and information, and I write blog posts, and I'll share those on Twitter. My handle is @MattHarrisEdD, and please connect with me there. Follow me on Twitter, send me some messages, share your experiences, and let's start this dialogue around what does blended learning really mean, and how is it valuable within your context? Okay? So please do both of those. And send me some questions about blended learning, and have an absolutely great day. Talk to you later. Bye.